It's 6:01. I'll start slowly. Hi, everybody. My name's Lisa Yates. I'm an architect from Antonazi. Um, I'm here with Mike Fortuna, architect and pool specialist from TLBA, and also Mike Doherty, who is from AECOM, engineers on the site. We've been working with the Greenwich High School Natatorium Feasibility Committee since April. We've got James here from the committee. I believe Sophie might join as well, Sophie Coven. Um, I'll lay a few ground rules, although doesn't look like there are going to be tons of you at this meeting. I'm going to give a brief introduction background to the project. This is a sort of an open Zoom that the school set up for us. So, we'll see how many people are here after I get through everything, but I would say please put your hand up and do that kind of thing so we can maintain a little bit of order. But as I said, if it stays this lightly attended, we can get pretty loose as we get into the questions. But I'm gonna spend maybe 10 minutes. Maybe it'll stretch out a little longer than that, sort of taking you through the process that we went through very briefly, because there's a lot of information. I want to sort of get to the part of it that I think as neighbors might concern you the most, which is not necessarily the nitty gritty of what's going on with the pool itself. Um, but that's also interesting. So I'll sort of take you through the whole process. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So at the beginning of this year, facilities noticed some issues with the pool, some leaks, and they hired Mike Fortuna of TLPA to go through and take a close look at the pool, and he found a few things, and some of them pointed to larger solutions than others. Um, One of the things he found was that 3 of the 4 drains for the pool are clogged. And this sounds like, oh, great, just fix them. The pool slab underneath the pool, it's a gravity slab. There's some water in the soil, so they made it very heavy. It's 5 feet thick. If they run the risk, if they are trying to open the clogs in these drains, that they might have a blowout and have more problems than they started with. The fact that they have one operable drain, it's causing some issues with suction. They installed a special switch. Mike could tell you a lot more about that, but I'm resolved to try to go quickly through that part. Sort of more concerning from a long range planning point of view, the dive clearances in the existing pool building are inadequate. And this is not uncommon, especially sort of in what they call the diving well, to have a little bit of overlap with the exact clearances. But there was a serious headroom issue where we only have 12 feet above the diving board, and you're supposed to have 16 feet. And there's a big steel girder right here in the photograph. And as a result of this report, the diving board is still pulled up in this position, and the diving team is practicing elsewhere right now. So this is, it's not a small fix. And another sort of issue with just the layout of the pool in general, the deck is not large enough. Specifically, you're supposed to have 5 feet around the entire pool deck. There's only 3 feet here, partially because there was a bulkhead added around the pool 20 years ago. This is only 3 feet. So, it's difficult to say where is this extra space going to come from in an existing facility. So this was presented through the Board of Ed in March of last year. And in response to this, the the district set up a full feasibility committee, and we were brought on board to try to help work through. There's an urgency to this because these are repairs that have to be made, especially for diving. But at the same time, this is when it became evident that this was going to be more than just a quick repair job. They wanted us to really look at all the options, put everything on the table, do some long range planning that would be beneficial for the campus. So stop doing this. Tell me if you guys can still see. We're trying to be fancy, but it makes it hard to go from slide to slide. So we developed a whole bunch of options, and I'm going to take you through them really, really quickly. So this is just a section of the school. North is up. This little piece here is the pool, right? So when I take you back to these plans, here's the pool area. Basically, as it is now, we call this option 0 because we're doing limited repairs to just the pool and saying, hey, you don't have a diving program anymore, which was not very acceptable. So this is the courtyard, the lunch courtyard. This is the west parking lot. And these are all sort of laid out the same way, so it's a nice way to take you through quickly. The next thing we looked at was how could we reintroduce the diving. So you keep the basic footprint of the pool and add a separate diving pool. That was an option. And all of these take the pool offline for some period of time. This looks like it's relatively, less invasive, but at the same time, you're building right next to the pool. You're pulling everything offline, at least for a little while. And then to do something a little bit more effective, we looked at putting something to the south. There's a little bit more room. You could get a few extra lanes in there and also have a diving area. This is very similar to the other option. So we have a lot of utilities in this area. There's a big chiller line that runs through the school, through this area as well. We started thinking big. This is an Olympic-sized swimming pool extending into the west parking lot, which has issues with traffic and utilities. There's a big retention basin out here, and there are environmental concerns with the soil, which I have an image that covers that in a little bit. And then we started thinking more about an Olympic-sized swimming pool is 50 yards. James is going to correct me if I get
meters.
Pool term meters. Thank you. Mike could correct me too. Short course stretch pool accommodates the kind of laps that they swim at the high school, which are 25 yards. And this would also accommodate water polo and accommodates diving. So it really is sort of the sweet spot for the size of pool that we would like to see for Greenwich High School. And these early options, we were looking at seating on the ground level. This option was a little bit problematic because, again, it was extending into this newly installed, these little dashed lines over here. This is water retention in the parking lot. It was just installed and the soil out there is questionable. So it wasn't really something we wanted to mess with if we could avoid it. So we started looking at options that expanded to the east instead of to the west. And this is what we call option 4.1, and it's our most viable option that retains the pool in its current location. And so at this point, and this option had seating on the first floor. It rebuilds the entire pool, and it also has spectator seating on the upper level. It's the scale of pool that the school, the athletics department that everybody's interested in. It would take the existing pool offline for a year and a half, possibly 2 years, which is a really tough thing for the team to absorb. We spent some time talking to other pools, other clubs in Greenwich, and everybody's willing to help, but it's just still not quite enough. And this is difficult to read, but I want to take you through very quickly. We analyzed a total of 11 options. We did not draw them all, but we sort of took those 6 different approaches. Option 6 was, what if we build off-site, which we decided that for the educational program is a non-starter because it effectively eliminates all elective swimming from the curriculum at the high school. So we started looking very seriously at, could we build a new pool on campus so that we didn't have to interrupt the existing pool, and then when we're done, we could take the pool offline and convert it to another use or demolish it. And so these 2 options that are in yellow became really the 2 front runners that we were talking about. And we did cost analysis for a lot of these. I have some of it in here. Option 5 is significantly more expensive than option 4.1 until you consider providing a temporary pool while the pool is offline, because that is something that you can do. They have sort of modular pools that you can install and put them in a bubble and have no diving, have no spectators, but you have a pool and you spend more than $7 million to do something like that. And that brought the 2 options sort of even with each other in terms of price. I'm going to take us back to this because we looked at a bunch of different factors to rank these options. So we were being data driven about it. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of this because I think we want to talk about the site. But we're, the numbers are not small, but but they're not small for any of the options. So if we did, if we did a 50-meter pool, it's even more. I'm going to take us to, so when we were looking for a place to site a new pool on the campus, north is to the right here. The images I was showing you before, north was up. This red line is an area where fill was placed when the building was constructed back in 1968, 1970. And this, you're probably familiar with this because you're neighbors. This is the area that's been giving the school a headache with voluntary remediation. This is the West Brothers Brook passing through the site, which I believe this was relocated when the school was built, and I think part of it's in a concrete channel now. But there were issues with contamination in the soil and the proximity to the water. So gradually the school's been working to remediate this, but you only take it down to a certain level. They put what they call a control layer. And now I've Mike already to correct me if I say anything incorrect. But it's still difficult to work in this area is the long and the short of it, especially to do something big like to dig out a pool or even foundations. You have to really go through this. And also the unknowns are fairly extreme. And to take you back to the overall site. So again, north is up, but this big circle here is this area of fill. And then across the stream, where we have the stadium and these tennis courts, we believe there's less of a concern here with contamination, in part because there's a lot of ledge in this area. And ledge is normally something that, we also try to avoid, but it's a little bit less of an unknown. We can plan for it a little bit better. And so we started homing in on this tennis court area as a nice possible site, which of course led us to start thinking about the Cardinal Drive, which back in 2021, I have this proposal, not from us. It's a little bit hazy here, but proposing this Cardinal Access Drive that passes from the west parking lot to Route 1. The intent is for it to, help relieve traffic by acting. It's an emergency access. It can be opened at times of high traffic. There talks about, having it run one way in the morning, run one way in the evening. And in order to place this, all of the tennis courts need to be relocated. The tennis courts are in need of repair now, so that's not so bad. But this is a tight fit, sort of no matter how you cut it. And there are doubts about this to begin with because it requires removal of so many trees. And the pool that we're talking about, which I'm going to show you in a minute, is so the 8 tennis courts are needed in one place for tennis competition at the high school. They already practice in 3 different locations. They practice at both middle schools and at the high school. So if these tennis courts can be relocated, which is something that the district is looking at, possibly to North Street School, which is a mile and a half away, the impact to the tennis center will be that they get new tennis courts, and it will not have a big impact on the educational program. They're not teaching tennis currently in the high school. So our pool is about half the size of these 8 tennis courts. So we thought that's an easier lift, an easier way to position on this site. So first I'm going to show you the plans for the pool, and then I'll show you potential layouts, and then we can start talking about how the high school can continue to be a good neighbor. So one of the first things you may notice when you look at this, it has this short course stretched pool that we've been talking about. It's very similar to option 4.1, which I shared, except it also has some locker rooms because it's remote from the high school, slightly remote from the high school. But there's a big flight of steps at the front entrance and a ramp. And this is because we know we're building a pool and we know we're building on ledge. So built into this scheme is a large underdeck area. And when I show you the site plans, it's possible the large underdeck area may get smaller depending on how we can site it into the hillside, but it's carried in the price and it's a potential amenity space. We're putting this over by the stadium. They were originally hoping to have a field house built with the stadium, so maybe this could take the pressure off of those kinds of spaces. And then there is an upper level with ample upper tier seating. And this sort of goes hand in hand with, we have the higher headroom, which sort of covers us for the upper tier seating. And it's also proven to be a big issue when you have the public and elderly people on the same level as the pool, as the athletes. Separation is required by code. It doesn't have to be on a second level, but it works really well if it can be. It's much drier. And here are a few sections through the pool. So you can see this area, this large underdeck area. And obviously the site's not totally flat, but we're in feasibility. You have to start somewhere. Mechanical equipment needs to go low as well. That's just a small part of the area. It's about 20,000 square feet if the whole thing is built up and not into the hillside. Another section and a few renderings pulled from the 3D model. And these are in progress, but you can see the seating up high, the sort of the size of the pool, acoustics and lighting. It's going to be a nice space. It's another view. And then this is starting to render these as well.
Are high dives out of the picture?
So we talked about high dives, and it was not the biggest ask from the group, and it would require more headroom.
And
James,
Ashley,
you might want to add, yeah.
yeah, and Ashley, I think one of the main drivers, and again, this applies similarly to a looking at an Olympic sized pool, is that the high school season is only a 1 meter diving, so there is no 3 meter. I know that's a standard, kind of in the diving world, but for high school purposes, they only dive 1 meter. So we said, look, we need to edit we're trying to be cognizant of all the different costs and factors here, and we felt like it would be a more appropriate ask to the community to make sure we have what for the high school season. We're not necessarily building, a facility that would be for all types of diving,
Oh,
and would certainly
well, that makes
expand
sense.
use.
I didn't know that it was just a 1 meter dive
Yeah.
situation. Okay, thank you.
So now I'm going to take us through a few site options that AECOM has been working on with us. They've been managing a lot of work on the site for the district. And this one, has the cardinal access driveway coming through. And it's sort of a similar fashion to the original proposal. It allows us to site this building so that I don't know how easy it is for you to see their topography lines here. The tennis courts are set up a little bit higher, and then this grade drops off as you get closer to the pedestrian bridge. Understand any of these options, this is a feasibility study. We can massage this building when it's in actual design so it fits its site more like a glove. But we look at this as a test fit for the site. And based on what we're seeing, we're pretty confident that we can make it work. So this one might reduce some of the steps that come into the pool, and it might reduce some of this additional area that we were generating underneath the pool deck. Simply because you have the extra height is on this side. This is downhill and this is uphill. There's probably an 8-foot grade change across this area. And again, we really like this sort of an athletic facility across from the stadium, this kind of synergy that happens. And then this one, the pool facility would be facing the high school. It's really close to the stadium. It's up a little bit higher. So it's really basically sitting on top of the tennis courts. The route of the road is slightly different. And it comes up the service drive and makes a turn into the west lot. But functionally, it would be very similar. This one has the option to remove fewer trees, especially because if this one really hits the road in this position, we'll make an effort to massage the building. These trees are not super numerous, but they're large and they're part of this nice stand of trees that's by the water course. And then the other thing I'm going to show you, AECOM made another pass at looking at tennis courts. So these rectangles represent 8 tennis courts. When we were really looking at how does this work with the roadway, you can see, I mean, they fit, but that extensive grading that would help a pool in this location is not great for the tennis court because this 8 feet of grade change is moved closer to the stream. It becomes a little bit more difficult.
Not to mention trees.
And trees. I counted this one. This one removes 60 trees. I think in 2021 they did a different count. It looked more like 40, 45, but it's a lot of trees. And if we go to an option like this one and massage it a little bit, I have it more in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 trees, and maybe less. I'm trying to under promise. So
When you say 20 to 25 trees, does that include the road?
yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah. Right. Well, if you can see the trees here, right? So if we figure that, and we counted these trees and these trees that are close by. So if this is maybe 10 trees and we can reduce it to say 2, then we only have to worry about the trees that are right here as you're crossing the stream. And there's something I think that's helpful about this option with the road compared to this one. When you come across this ridge, it's a nice organization for the parking lot, but you're really going through that stand of trees. And I know that we look at them and we count them carefully, but I also love to just look at, now that we can look at this, it really gives you a sense of where they're the most lush, and the most sort of grouped together. So, if you're passing in this area, it feels like you're being a little bit less disruptive than if you're going straight through.
Lisa, talk about our scorecard too. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
important.
thank you for the cue, because it's kind of circular, right? We wanted to go back to so this narrative option matrix is built around these parameters that we decided were important for the pool, the site, a successful project, feasibility. These have to do with the program and the pool itself. I'm getting to the scorecard, I promise. And then we looked carefully at the site impacts as well. Polluted soils versus ledge, impact on the lunch courtyard versus site utilities, parking. The construction schedule itself is an issue. And, it's a funny thing. We do a lot of work in a lot of schools, and renovation in a school um, is very often almost as expensive as new or more expensive. And the reason for that is time, primarily. Because schools are continuously occupied. They are notoriously difficult and expensive to work in, because you have to swing the students around and disrupt their education and keep everybody safe. This last section is cost. If you're moving off site, you have additional transportation costs and staffing in excess of you have a little additional staffing if you have a separate facility on site as well, but it's a lighter lift. And the total project cost, and then sort of just our summary of what feels, this is important. Some of these, the signature sort of flagship pool facilities, there's a potential that private fundraising could really, take a chunk out of the cost that's to be borne by the town. And additionally, there'll be more viable options for renting to other groups. So we took each of these options that I went through in the narrative. So the narrative was sort of like an exposition for the feasibility committee to digest everything, because there's a lot going on here. But then we scored everything. So pretty much everything got 3 points except for cost. Was weighted five times as much as any other particular issue. And it got 15 points. And so we went through each one, tried to keep it simple. These are color coded, so you can see where interruption of the facility due to construction was really knocking out a lot of these that were right on top of the existing pool. Clearly we want to keep things on site. And then we looked through cost, and the ones that are less expensive are really falling down in terms of the program. And so when we looked at all of these things together, option 5 was by far the highest score at 56 points out of a possible 63. And option 4.1 came in second. It had some competition with the variants that were sort of similar to it. We looked at 50-meter pools 2 ways, both on site and also on the tennis court site. The primary reason this is scoring lower is because it costs a lot more, and also because the bang for the buck goes down. Yes, it's a nicer facility. The region would be thrilled that you put it in, but it's beyond what the school needs. Sort of much like what we were your question about diving. The longer course is not something that the high schoolers are performing, sort of the Olympic lap swimming. So that's sort of the wrap up. And I want to see how many of us are there here. So I can open this up with hands.
Lisa, would you mind if I just said a couple thoughts?
I would love it if you said a few things. Seriously.
Well,
It always helps.
So first, Lisa, I thought you did a great job just explaining the overview in a pretty short amount of time. But guys, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the RT. I'm on the RTM. I'm the chair of the budget committee on the RTM, and Dr. Jones asked me to be part of this. My family does have an aquatics background, so it kind of fit nicely with that. But one of the things I just, we thought it was really important. We did have BET representation on the feasibility committee as well. It was, in fact, the BET chair, Harry Fisher, has been a member. Um, and I think one of the things we really wanted to try and do in this feasibility study is really look at all the options. Yeah, look at the ones that were most obvious that Lisa went through. Look at the simple fixes, look at the more extensive options, but make a good record of all the different things that we looked at. Because it really was a pretty rigorous process, and Mike and Lisa deserve a lot of credit for helping kind of flesh these out. So we kind of really understood what we were working for, and I think as we were talking about it, one of the big things, at least for the aquatics community, is if you don't have a pool for 2 years, that's a big problem. And you guys probably know that just as well as I do that Greenwich High School's aquatics teams are some of the best in the entire school, town, whatever. There's something like the boys and girls swim team and dive teams have won a combined. It's kind of mind blowing. 140 state championships. So it's not just every once in a while. Um, so we really didn't. I think if you had a 2 year down. 2 years without a pool, our sense was that's a really big problem to the aquatics community. And so we wanted to try and do whatever we could, either to solve for that or to find an option that wouldn't have that. And I think at the end of the day, we know the driveway is a big priority for the district, but also I've heard anecdotally from the neighbors as well. And our thought is, look, this has been a project that's kind of sat on the back burner for a long time. And it looks to us like tennis is going to be moving regardless of what you do at the pool. So just because it doesn't really fit that well on the site. And so we said, look, let's seriously look at that. We kept all the other options in the mix and then basically whittled it down. And I think that scorecard, basically speaks volumes, right? It's clear, it's a clear front runner in terms of the best thing for not only the pool, the high school, et cetera. We did not weight it with extra marks for combining it with the driveway, although I think that's probably pretty obvious to you guys. Um, and I think, the idea here is Greenwich High School's pool is fine. It's a good pool. Most high schools in Fairfield County, it's probably as it stands, falling apart it's probably still better than those. But the current pool that we have is substandard. If you go to as you spend enough time at pools around the country, like I do, what we have is outdated and inadequate for the programs. So that's the sort of thought process behind the solution we arrived at is we should have what other towns have and not necessarily more but definitely not be willing to settle for an inferior facility, especially if we're going to be making a big investment in this. And look, this would be the pool for the next 50 plus years. So in any case, that's all I really wanted to say. And I know we certainly welcome your thoughts. I believe this is going to the Board of Ed in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll go from there. So, but thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking, and I think from on the neighbor side, we have maybe 3 or 4 of you. So if you're polite and don't talk over each other, we can have some questions. And if it gets hairy, I'll ask for hands. Please go ahead. You're muted though.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Dempsey. I live at 21 Hillside Road, so I'm right across basically from the glass doors. And thank you for this beautiful project. I think if I had to summarize, most of the neighbors on Hillside Road are really supportive of a strong community a strong high school. We only have one, having the best programming we possibly can. And so time and time again, I would say that we've been supportive and tried to, kind of, we understand that we all purchased properties across from the high school. So we've been, I think, we've definitely shown the flexibility of our position. And I think most of us are for this great opportunity. Things have to be replaced, and why throw good money after bad at this point? So I think it sounds like a great project. I do think that there is, which I think most of you probably don't know, a very, very long history of and string of disappointments where things have been promised and not delivered, or things have been executed without proper permitting or advising neighbors, just of bare consequences. Like if you're, blowing up a hillside of rock to put in more play fields, which is awesome. Maybe you'd have the courtesy to let neighbors know. There's been a series of things. So, I think we're a little bit leery, but of course excited about the idea of the access. We came out, a bunch of us, in strong support of and advocated with our time for Cardinal Stadium because of the access road, and then it was taken from the project. And certainly we understand exigencies, the timing of getting stands up that were, about to fall down. So I think we've tried to be really understanding. My question is, Lisa, and perhaps Michael, I don't know what your position is, maybe architect, but when it comes to planning and zoning, and the BET from a financial standpoint, and James, maybe you can jump in here. How important is this driveway to this project? I.e., if we, are coming out and trying to be supportive for it, is it likely to be stripped away? And will they, so for example, you might want to expound upon whether we need additional parking. It's already an issue, lack of parking space or lack of using the space behind the high school. Just curious what you anticipate will be planning and zoning's view of this, or any of their concerns other than trees.
Should I take that, Lisa? Or do you
Sure,
want
I'll fill in if there's anything I think needs to be filled in.
Yeah, so Elizabeth, it's a great question, and I would just say that the driveway is part of the project, right? I mean, the all the discussions. I mean, look, the Board of Ed would still have to approve the feasibility, the ed spec, right? So I can't speak to that. That'll be a Board of Ed decision, but I think the feasibility committee's strong recommendation is that we combine their one project, that it would be one building committee overseeing it. It would be codified into the ed spec for it. So, I can't speak to what the BET would necessarily decide, but the BET does not have the power to adjust the ed spec. So they either would choose to fund the design of the project, or they would not. And the design, and then after that the construction. So as at least as it currently stands, their project is one in the same. And the only way for that to be adjusted is if the Board of Ed decides that they don't want that to be part of the project.
Oh,
I
okay.
would-
So in
yeah.
other words, when it happened, sorry, just so I can better understand the example,
Please.
to look back at Cardinal Stadium, there was a time exigency and also maybe concerns. I thought they were kind of weak, sorry, in my opinion, and I do know a lot about the contamination over there, but there was a budget issue, there was this. So it started really with the Board of Ed saying, okay, we agree to take the road, the driveway off to better meet. It wasn't like the planning and zoning dictated it. It was a Board of Ed decision.
No, yeah, I mean, it would have been if there's an ed spec around it, right? I mean, I think from a from a P and Z perspective, I mean, you guys, so I'm the chair of the Old Greenwich School Building Committee, which is obviously a very different type of project than this, but um, I have some experience going through that process, and I think, look, we have not. P and Z won't give this a hearing until it's much further down the
Mhm.
path. This would, I think they would be looking pretty rigorously at this because this would be some, involve some changes to where buildings are and things like that, and certainly with the traffic component with the driveway, the number of trees and things like that. They're going to be looking at all of it. But I think our thought is we know I think, as I said before, I know this driveway piece is kind of important to the neighborhood. I think the interests frankly align, on this. While we have to, would have to go through the municipal improvement process and then the final site plan process, a lot of details to be worked out prior to any of that. I think this is being proposed as one project that would try, we have given some thought to, like, feasibility committee studies have been done before where there's been no consideration to from a P and Z perspective, right? It's sort of like, well, this is what we want. And then you find out years later, it's not, it's never, that dog's never going to hunt. I think in this case, we specifically have, that's one of the scoring criteria. And I think as we were sort of sitting around the table looking at this, we were like, look, it's not going to necessarily sail through because it is a change, right? It's not just, you're not just renovating a current facility. But, I think we are trying to do the things that should garner support, mindful of, removing trees, right? Mindful of the traffic pattern, mindful of a whole host of other things.
Yeah, so we have a coverage issue for zoning, no matter what we do. Any square foot that we add to built environment on this site is a coverage issue. By going near the water course, we know we'll be working with inland wetlands also, but that seems, that's not something that has stopped us from putting in the stadium or the cooling plant or the electrical, or, the high school itself is right next to the brook. But it's from a design point of view, you can't really design one of these without the other. It's a holistic process. The siting of the road is really dependent on where you put the building. The building requires the driveway for access. Also, I mean, one really big reason to provide the access driveway, we love that it makes your life easier, but first responders from the high school, it's a huge issue. And it also applies to this new building, where the fire marshal is going to want to see us with great access to and from this building. It also applies to the stadium. So it's one of the things we liked about doing it this way, especially after we really dug into the tennis piece and felt satisfied that we weren't giving anybody the short end of the stick, is that it takes multiple issues that are long range planning issues for the high school, and it tries to tackle them all together so that you get a good solution to, everything that you're facing.
Thank you. So Lisa, just to reiterate, you said that you can't really build something like this or provide fire access, emergency
Yeah,
services without,
I mean,
in other words, could you not treat it the way they've treated everything at Cardinal Stadium? You have to kind of, well, I guess it does have a little bit more.
it's got frontage on Route 1, so I think it's a little bit easier to deal with. I know that for schools, the fire marshal likes to see us encircle 75% of the building with a fire access lane, and so this isn't quite 75%, but with this double-sided access, it's really doing a lot more for you than looping something up and around.
So either position that you all will choose, assuming this particular spec goes through, if it was flipped on the other side, so it was further to the east, yeah, I see, you really can't get to it just by virtue of the current driveway. I thought
You can, but you're going to need a cul-de-sac. You're going to need to turn around. Do that
right.
with a fire truck. Not.
Yeah, I think that I mean, I can just speak from the Board of Ed perspective that we definitely want this driveway in for all the safety reasons that Lisa was talking about. And then also additionally, just to deal with the traffic issue, which is a burden for, certainly for the neighborhood, but also is a burden for the schools, right? Getting buses in
Right.
and out in the morning and getting people to school on time.
It's
So
also a
I-
safety issue itself.
Yeah,
the
so I
traffic.
mean, I
Yeah.
think that's something that we need to resolve no matter what. And then the pool is a reason to push it forward. And I think we've been in a unfortunate situation as a Board of Ed of being very reactive of dealing with different projects. And I think we're trying to be more proactive of like, okay, what can we anticipate? Some of the things are coming down the pike and how can we plan for them in advance, right? And I think this is an opportunity to do that so that it's a better result for everybody. And I just have to put a plug in for our aquatics programs because there was the signing day today, and 9 of the 23 kids who signed today are aquatics athletes at Greenwich High School. So the aquatics program, I mean, James mentioned it earlier, but I mean, it's incredibly strong.
Great. Just great. Thank you so much. Those are amazing answers and a lot of gratitude for all the work you're doing and the idea of just talking to us as neighbors and yeah, thrilled if that road could work. That'd be great.
Good.
James and Sophie, I mean, and Lisa, thank you so much for being so respectful of our neighborhood and coming to us with this plan and showing us what you have, your thoughts. And so far, just as a feasibility project and where you're at, I think this looks very positive for the community and our neighborhood as well. And this is exactly the type of thing that should be happening between the high school and the neighbors. We're all in this together, and we can create a wonderful, very unique and special community here in Greenwich if we work together. And yes, Elizabeth and I have been working on the second egress and traffic safety for Greenwich High School for over a decade now. We've insisted on this egress because it is a huge safety flaw. And not having a second egress for a school of this size is simply a planning and zoning flaw. And a building like this would never pass planning and zoning without a second egress at this point. So yes, we're supportive of this project so far. And we think that, this could be very positive. I think it could also be positive from the tree warden's point of view. Potentially from, there would be more trees, there's less impervious surface. And I think we should also consider coming up with a traffic plan, Sophie, from the Board of Ed, when this egress does get built with the pool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've discussed it a little bit informally, but certainly like we would want to have everybody involved. And I think Ralph May was on here earlier, but he has a lot to say about it too. I know he's lived it for a long time of how we can improve it. But of course, we would want to hear from the neighbors, all of their ideas on how to make it better.
Ralph
traffic
is here
situation.
and he just unmuted.
Oh, great.
So I
Oh,
think
good.
the access road we need that yesterday. So
Oh,
yeah.
I'm in agreement with everybody that's spoken.
Great.
Well,
Yes.
we love working with Ralph. He is very
Yeah.
respectful to our neighborhood, and he's a wonderful
It's all
advocate.
positive for both Greenwich High School and for our neighborhood.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
You know-
the one thing I would just give a plug. I appreciate hearing some of that, and I would just say, kind of from my perspective, this feels like, I mean, we'll see, fingers crossed, right? There's a very long road ahead on this, but it does feel to me like it's like kind of one of those rare opportunities where the interests kind of align in a lot of different ways. And so, I mean, it's why, frankly, we suggested this option, right? Is like how, we were sort of saying, how could we propose to rebuild a school on the current site and then perhaps the driveway gets kicked even further down the road, right? It's like, no, like, let's look at this. It should be acceptable, I think, from the school perspective, the tennis perspective, the aquatics perspective, the neighbor perspective, right? And I think if it, obviously there will be plenty of hearings before P and Z about this. And the devil will be in the details that the building committee will work out and all that kind of stuff. But certainly I think it'll be important to communicate to the building committee that we ensure this, like, ongoing relationship. I know if I'm on it, I'll make sure I'm not, I don't get any say in that, but if I'm on it, I will make sure that that's important. We've certainly done that with OG and just kept the neighbors in the loop and make sure you guys have a voice in this so that, there are some course corrections if there need to be. But I think it's kind of a rare aligning of interests from multiple fronts, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I personally think that the ex knowing it from the neighbor's perspective, the benefit to the community from a public safety perspective, and also just from a convenience perspective, which again, we're not going to be spending tens of millions of dollars on convenience, but when I look at the Sturm and Drang, you can go back and look at newspaper articles in the Greenwich Time, like maybe a couple of years after the high school was built, and the number of comments about traffic and egress issues on Hillside from way back then, like over 50 years ago. The parents that have said, like, I'm not going into the back of that school where I'm supposed to drop off unless my life depends on it. So it's an enormous, it's so important for this incredible swim team, but it's enormous impact on our community as a whole, not just the neighbors. I mean, the biggest thing is not having a legal liability when your emergency services are not able to get up Hillside Road. If someone calls alarm and the parents are clogging that road, some kid could bleed out, or, a fire could happen. So I'm thrilled from so many levels. I think it's a really powerful project. So thumbs up.
So what are our next steps, everybody? Where do we go from here?
I would just say, I think, this is going to go to the Board of Ed. I think, they've gotten, Sophie, I think some of your members have gotten a preview. They certainly know we're working on this. And, I don't anticipate a Board of Ed, making a hasty decision on this. Like, I would think it's a big project, right? So I would expect they'll ask some tough questions. I think the meetings tentatively are slated for the November 20th and December 11th.
Correct.
I think those would have public comments. So, if you wanted to advocate, that would be a good opportunity to do that. And then, whether the Board of Ed takes another few weeks or month or whatever, like, they'll decide that. But I think the intent here then, and I plan to say this, tomorrow at the Capitol hearing at Town Hall, is the intent is let's get it going, right? Let's fund the design stuff this coming fiscal year. Let's get this going. From the pool perspective, we truly, it would be foolish to wait, because the pool could literally get shut down any day, and then we have a big problem. So I think let's get after it, and then it's, you guys know the town budget process, and we'll be working it through that as best we can.
Right. And we've been, a really important part of this process has been outreach. We had a focus group with the Board of Ed back in May. We met with all of the clubs that support the pool, the feeder groups. We met with the parents. We reached out to the Board of Ed again more recently. The BET, Harry Fisher's on the committee. And he was able to weigh in on things that, not the total cost, but bang for the buck kind of things.
Did you have any read on his view of the overall scope, including the road, like how he felt about that?
I would say that Harry was the one who reminded us that the design money for just the road only, sorry, I should call it the driveway only.
Driveway, yeah.
The driveway
Yes,
only
it's a driveway.
was slated is slated to be in the capital budget. And I think this coming or the next fiscal year. We definitely, when we started discussing the tennis court option, um, I think he definitely was like, well, wait a sec, we're, all of a sudden that becomes a big project. And we're like, yes, but you probably do save something in terms of if you do them at the same time, as opposed to hiring two separate architects and, all that kind of stuff. So, I think he understood the synergy aspect of it. Um, so, I don't want to, Harry can speak for himself, but I think, nobody in the feasibility committee has said, this option's dead on arrival. It's not happening, right? Not one person. In fact, it's been pretty unanimous that this is the right course.
Mhm.
Harry has told me personally he supports the second egress.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Wow. Well, that's great. So we can, James, you said that there's, is it a Board of Ed meeting, December 7th and the 20th?
Sorry, November 20th and December 11th.
Yeah.
December 11th. Okay. And
And
we
then
just,
Guys gave us a good warm up for the 20th. Thank you.
so it would be helpful for us to show that there's neighborhood consensus of support from Hillside Road.
If you all you could remind us after this, I'm sure the neighbors would like to come and voice our support for this project and the second egress.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always have public comment in the beginning of all of our meetings, all of our business meetings. And also, I would say if you want to write an email, that's also appreciated if it's not possible for you to come. The emails are also good.
Oh, that's great. And is there a singular Board of Ed email that covers all of you guys?
Yes, yeah. It's I can send it to you. I feel like, but it's like BOE members or something, and everybody gets it. Yeah.
Okay,
And
great.
that's the best way to do it. And then honestly, I would always recommend that you email your comments, because just in case, a board member isn't there or whatever, it's good to have belt and suspenders in that way.
And would you want us to get the emails of the new, sorry, are there gonna be more people sworn in? I'm not sure how that all works.
It's actually, they already are on.
Ah,
So
okay.
everyone's being sworn in next Thursday, but right now, if you send it to BOE members, everyone will get it already.
So
They've already been added. Yeah.
Board of Ed members at boardofedmembers@greenwich.k12.ct.us.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I didn't want to ask too many questions. I'm really good at that. But is it possible I could just ask Lisa, while you're there, to what extent will this building be higher as it's on a bit of a rise than the rest of the high school that's in front of it, shall we say?
So we're going to be, regardless of whether we sit on top of the tennis courts or not, will comply with the zoning maximum height of 35 feet. We're at 7 meters from the water to the underside of structure. So, it's in the neighborhood of, say, like just under 30 feet when you get to the roof.
And
we are possibly up a few feet, but especially if we can set this down, we should be okay. Let me look at some of these
and
cross sections.
are the utilities and HVAC creating kind of another story? That was another issue with the neighbor. They promised the science center would only be so high, and then they built kind of another floor.
Science centers are notorious for requiring lots of rooftop mechanicals for lab exhaust. So
Right.
we should not have that same issue.
It's 3 stories, 4 stories, or what?
No, it's really like a single story with this sort of walkout space.
Could be
And
comparable
In other
to
words,
the gym roof.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Thank you,
It's going to
Mike.
be comparable to in other words, our neighbor's going to see it from the street rising up behind the high school.
No.
That's
No, I think you'll see it
No.
from one for sure, but not from Hillside. I
not
mean,
from Hillside, yeah.
in the winter when the leaves are down, you'll see it, but
You're gonna-
comparably to the gym.
Yeah, you'll have to try.
And- I'd also be curious what kind of light it's going to emit.
I just was going to say, I really hope, James, if you're on the building committee, you know, the light that has been coming from the new secure entrance, and granted for all these safety reasons, should someone choose to pick the most impenetrable front door to do something, it's stunning. And I would think particularly for the neighbors on Old Church, which really should be here, more so than Hillside maybe. How you light the building and security, it really is impactful on the neighborhood, more than you would realize. And what is in the front door vestibule, which Ashley did an amazing job with her committee on, it's an airport. It's something. So I'm hoping, I would hope for our neighbors on Old Church, you don't light up the facade, or that the lights are really high tech and, bonneted down. So
Yeah, I mean, I think I obviously the building committee will have to design the P and Z's lighting regulations and things like that. But I think it's a good point, right? Like there's some sensitivity on the lights. We're certainly tracking that, and that'll be a good footnote, or not a good footnote, but a good sort of directive that the building committee, if they want to be successful, right, they're going to need to, be really thoughtful about that.
yeah, particularly from the neighbors on the Old Church side, I would.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the intent is not going to be to have lights that people can see, or around the world, to showcase the pool. It's just going to be to have a pool.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have window placement though, and
Sure.
maybe evening things. So it's substantial. Yeah, that's
Sure.
substantial. So I would be very careful, because I certainly from Hillside, I think a good chunk of the building will be blocked from
Right,
by
right.
the existing building. So just a word to the wise, because yeah.
That's
Always.
it's a very good point.
Yeah, great point.
Lisa and James, could you all send me, and I'm sure Elizabeth would like it too, a paper copy of the documents that you presented to us tonight, so we could speak more intelligently about this, because it was hard for me to see the details on Zoom. And especially the how you did the grading of each project, et cetera. I thought it was pretty interesting.
I have screenshots, Ashley, I can forward to you.
Oh, okay.
And I think there will be I think maybe Lisa, maybe you were going to go here, but there will be an actual document that is the ed spec that will have the sort of key things. It will have the scorecard. It will have the sort of narrative. It will have some of the diagrams, right? So it
The
will
only thing, it doesn't have all of the, the generation of all of the options that we're not pursuing, but it will have the full drawings of option 5 and the site options. And it's going live in a couple of days. So
I think that would be the
the
most
ed
helpful,
specs.
unless you disagree, Ashley. But I would that'll be it's effectively the draft Bible for the project.
Okay, no problem.
So and the time, look, I know timeline, it's a joke to even ask about that. And I think I also just asked Sophie this question too, but it would, if for some reason things kind of fell into place as expected, this project would start under construction in 27, or
I think that's the if you got a crystal ball,
yeah, I know. Am I a betting woman?
You're a betting
would
woman,
say
2027.
I would say from my perspective, I think we should be aiming to start the summer of 27.
Mhm.
start construction, like, and I honestly don't think we can wait.
Summer, like that would be the ideal, summer 27, and then it would take maybe 2 years.
Yeah, call it 18 months, 24 months, something like
Yeah,
that.
we'll see how you're doing with OG.
Yeah, let's see. Exactly.
Well, that's fantastic. The reason why I was asking would be that, and this is, obviously way too premature, but once things get locked in, it may be worth talking. Obviously, Jim Michaels in Public Works is going to know, but they interface with the Connecticut Department of Transportation on the idea of the Hillside Bridge. 18,000 people going past Hillside in 2 lanes each direction, with that bridge now then causing it go down to 1 lane. And I mention this because really for the last 12, maybe 15 years, they put off the project for whatever reason and funding. And they might be happy to hear from Jim Michaels when this project is a go, to say, hey, why don't we do it after we get this drive done? I don't know if that project can wait either. It's been so long, but it would be really great to tap into that aspect. And I think really positive for town leadership to not have egg on its face when that happens, and to have that driveway done, because
Yeah.
it'll really help.
It will really help. I totally agree.
Yeah. So anyway, amazing.
Yeah, and DPW is going to have to be involved because there's this driveway and talking about getting onto getting
The post road,
post road and all that.
the curb cuts, and
Yeah.
yeah.
They're going to be all over this, and then the traffic impact. I mean, so yeah, they're going to have to be.
Oh, what fun. Well, that's great, guys. Amazing. Thank you so much. Really, it's amazing that you guys are chatting with us, and I'm so excited about the plan. And thank you to all of you guys. What a great start to this project.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We'll
rally the troops.
Excellent.
okay. Bye.
All
Thanks
right.
so much.
Thanks
Have a good
very
night,
much.
guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.